Hi, this is Cath King from Seeking Health, and today I'd like to talk to you about why plant-based or vegan diets fail. And this topic is really close to my heart because not only do I follow a plant-based diet and prescribe a plant-based diet for my clients, but I also see that animal agriculture is the biggest environmental problem we have today, and that it's morally indefensible. And so I really hate hearing stories about people who tried a vegan diet and it didn't work for them, and so they went back to eating meat. And I guess my message today is that that need not ever happen. We're designed to thrive on plants. We have no biological adaptations to predation or to meat eating. And you can actually watch one of my previous videos on why plant-based diets are good for us based on the science behind that. And someone recently asked me whether I thought a vegan diet was for everybody or if there were some people who need to eat meat. And I guess it's always possible that there's someone on the planet who needs it, but I've never met anyone. And there's always been, whenever I see clients who this has happened to, or just people in everyday life, there's always been a reason why they failed to thrive on a plant-based diet. And so I'm going to go through the most common reasons that I come across today in this video. So here are the most common reasons people fail to thrive on a vegan diet that I've found. So first is processed foods. The next is the most commonly overlooked food group, and ineffective supplementation, fine-tuning for individual differences, pre-existing health conditions, and social and mindset factors. Processed foods. So this is the number one reason I think people fail to thrive on vegan diets. And yes, I know that you know this one, but knowing is not enough. You actually have to buy the fresh fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, and prepare them yourself from scratch, and then eat them to benefit from the knowledge. And remember that cooking is also a form of processing. So even if you have no aspirations to be a raw vegan, you still need to eat a large percentage of your food raw. And I guess what I'm saying here is that if you're vegan, you need to eat vegetables. And it's surprising how many people, when they become vegan, will get most of their calories from things like bread and pasta and other processed foods, rather than from the vegetables and the fruit. And that doesn't mean that you should never eat grains or bread. It just means that it shouldn't account for the majority of your calories. And these days there are so many amazingly delicious vegan foods, and you can buy vegan meats and cheese and milks, anything. And any food you've ever loved on a standard Aotearoa diet or standard American diet can be veganized. And it has been. And this can make a transition to a vegan diet really easy. But if you don't move on from these processed foods, your health will suffer. So you need to eat real fruit and vegetables, eat whole foods, eat a wide variety, all the colors, and eat lots and lots of raw foods. The most overlooked food group, green leaves. These are a separate food group, and they should make up a large portion of your diet. Greens are not vegetables, and greens are the primary food group that match human nutritional needs most completely. They have protein, fiber, minerals, they're very alkaline, and they've got chlorophyll. And nobody eats enough greens. As a guide, you should be consuming about 500 grams of greens each day, so that's about 8 cups of green leaves. And green leafy vegetables are things like spinach, kale, silver beet, lettuce, and weeds like stinging nettle, chickweed, and dandelion. Ineffective supplementation. Everybody needs to supplement due to degraded soils, environmental toxins, modern farming practices, stressful lifestyles, and it's really important to supplement with whole foods wherever possible. So whole foods are quite often these days called superfoods, and because there are less nutrients in our soils today than there were, say, 50 years ago, and if it's not in the soil, it's not going to be in your food, whether that's plant-based or meat-based. And superfoods are really just a food that has more bang for your buck than most. And if your food is depleted, it makes sense to include the most nutrient-dense types of foods possible. So those are things like wheatgrass, barley grass, spirulina, chlorella, goji berries, and a whole list of other things. And when it comes to deficiencies, a really good tool is blood testing, and you can have a look at one of my other videos on getting your blood tested and what you should test for. And I just want to really have a more of a word and go a bit deeper into vitamin B12, because this vitamin is really, really important. It's necessary for energy, for brain and nerve development and function, and a deficiency can be extremely serious and can also be irreversible. And no food naturally contains vitamin B12. Animals don't make vitamin B12 any more than plants make vitamin B12, because it's actually made by microorganisms. And the reason that meat contains more B12 is that meat is dirtier. It has more microorganisms. But if you don't eat meat, there's not as many microorganisms on plants. And in the past, we used to eat plants that were a lot dirtier, but these days we wash everything. Modern day humans are obsessed by cleanliness, so it's very unlikely that there'll be any B12 from the microorganisms on your plants. And in the past as well, people would have got B12 from natural water sources, but again, modern humans have sanitized and chlorinated and fluorinated our water, so that's no longer a viable source for us either. And we do actually have good bacteria in our guts that will produce B12, but again, most people have damaged the ecosystem in their gut, so there's no luck there either. And as if matters weren't bad enough for many people, even if they consume enough B12, they aren't absorbing it. And you see, we need something called intrinsic factor in order to absorb B12. And through antibiotic use, steroids, birth control pills, and a whole lot of other things that we do to ourselves, we have often destroyed our ability to absorb B12, and that's why increasing numbers of meat eaters are also becoming B12 deficient. So we need to supplement. And there are two kinds of B12. There's cyanocobalamin, which is the most common form of B12 that's available in most of the supplements you buy, because it's really cheap to produce. And cyanocobalamin is not found in nature, and it's not very bioavailable for us. And the second form of B12 is methylcobalamin, and that's the specific form that's needed by our bodies, and it's far better absorbed and it's retained in higher amounts than the cyanocobalamin. So if you're currently not supplementing, I strongly urge you to start, or to get tested for B12 and to continue to get tested for B12. You can also go to my web store, and I sell a sublingual liquid form of methylcobalamin, and that gets absorbed directly into your bloodstream because it's sublingual. It goes through the membranes of your mouth, and so you don't need to have intrinsic factor. It's very well absorbed, it's also very affordable, and it lasts for months. So supplementing is like your insurance policy. It's not a sign of failure. Now, this is quite a specialized topic and very individualized, so I'll just cover it briefly here. The fine-tuning. you really need to experiment to get your ratios right. So mostly that's in terms of how much you need in terms of your carbs, your protein and your fats. And different people can differ depending on their blood type, depending on whether they're a slow, fast or mixed oxidizer, depending on whether they're sympathetic or parasympathetic, their age, or even the season of the year can change your requirements. And some people, like me, do very well on a high carb ratio, and so I tend to eat more of an 80-10-10 diet. But my partner Michael needs a little bit more protein than I do, so that doesn't mean that he needs to eat meat. He just needs to eat plants that contain higher amounts of protein. And pre-existing conditions. So some conditions require a different diet in order to correct or reverse these conditions. It's still a vegan diet, but it might be different from a long-term diet that would be recommended. So things like heart disease, diabetes or hypothyroidism, you have to get quite specific in terms of what foods you actually eat. And then there are also some conditions that will affect how you absorb the nutrients in your food: candida, leaky gut, allergies and irritable bowel syndrome. So for example, if you have candida, for instance, it can cause symptoms like bloating and gas because an overgrowth of yeast leads to the fermentation of foods instead of good digestion. And remember, you aren't actually what you eat, you're what you absorb and assimilate. Social and mindset factors. Now this actually rivals processed foods, I think, as the number one reason people fail on vegan diets. So social factors are things like pressure from family and friends, the fact that vegan food often isn't even available socially, and being surrounded all the time by a meat-eating cultural norm. And I've covered the social aspect of eating a healthy plant-based diet in a previous video, but the mindset factors are also really powerful. So people become emotionally and physically addicted to food, and often people will attribute detox symptoms to the diet not working. Because whenever you clean up your diet, your body says, great, let's clean house, and it starts moving all the old accumulated toxins out, and that process can feel really uncomfortable. You can get headaches, nausea, feel tired with no energy, you can have cold and flu symptoms, you can get rashes and generally feel pretty lousy. So it's no wonder that a lot of people might conclude that a vegan diet is not for them. But remember, it's only temporary, and it's a good thing. You want all that stuff gone. And it also seems that whenever a vegan gets sick, it's blamed on their diet. Whereas if someone following a standard American diet gets sick, diet is never even considered as a cause. Then there's the one line that seems that there's no argument against it. People say, I just listened to my body. And so many people use this to justify going back to eating meat. Their addicted, toxic body told them that they need to eat meat, and they believed it. If you've been eating meat and dairy all your life, trust me, you are addicted. And I remember dealing with these intense kind of cravings when I first became vegan. But your body is lying to you. It will tell you whatever it needs to get its hit. And your mind is just as addicted as your body. So we have a huge emotional attachment to food, and you really want to believe your body. But until you've broken your addiction, both the psychological and the physiological addiction, you can't trust your body. And unlike an addiction to drugs, you're constantly surrounded by animal products. It's likely that your friends and family will continue to eat meat in front of you. It will constantly be offered to you, and it's there when you go into a supermarket, into a food court at the mall, when you turn on the television, you just can't escape it. So it can be really tempting. So those are the most common reasons I've come across that people fail to thrive on a plant-based diet, and I'd love to hear your experiences. You know, have you tried going vegan and failed, and what was the reason for that? Or do you know people who've failed to thrive on a vegan diet? So write, write comments below and let me know. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.